All right, everybody. So welcome to Choice Words, how labels can get in the way of solutions when it comes to our pet's behavior. I'm Jessica Char, and I'm here thanks to Silicon Valley Pet Project for hosting and letting me talk about this. This is our last Wednesday webinar of our summer webinar series. So if you've missed any of them, they are available to watch online, and we might be reprieving them. We'll see if they come back and make a second turn. All right, so today we're going to be talking about why we label and why we might not want to label. So why is this even a topic of conversation? Why is this even a problem that we need to consider? We're going to talk about the words we use and what we mean by them, why we might want to rethink them, and what we can say and think instead. So we have a whole list of words that we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about going past that. What do we actually do if we want to change our pet's behavior? What do we actually want to think other than that label? And there'll be time at the end for questions. About me, again, my name is Jessica Char. I am the owner and trainer with two pet behavior and behavior modification and training businesses, Canine Engineering, the dog side, and Feline Engineering is the cat side. I'm a member of the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants and the Association of Professional Dog Trainers. I'm a certified professional dog trainer, a certified separation anxiety trainer, and a fear-free certified trainer. So that is why I come here with this knowledge. That is my bunny Dewey, and I certainly have some choice words about him at times, but he's overall a very good boy. All right, so the problem with labels. Why are we even talking about labels and why we might want to avoid them? First off, why do we label things? Well, we're trying to categorize them. We're trying to make sense of them. We're trying to put things into a box so we explain why it's happening. Try to figure out what we Google. What do we Google to find answers to fix this problem? It's hard to Google exactly the paragraph of things that happened in the last 24 hours, but I can easily Google stubborn dog. I can easily Google jealous cat. Sometimes the labels give us a break from feeling responsible. We wonder, what did I do to make my pet behave this way? Maybe they're just dominant. Maybe that's why they're behaving. It's not me. And it's nice to have that break, right? It's nice to not feel responsible and to kind of put it on our pet for a minute. Is they're the reason for this problem behavior. And the last one on here is, of course, not all labels are really bad. Sometimes our label is a badge of honor or sort of a term of endearment. I call my bunny, I call him a jerk fairly often. But it doesn't change how we interact. It doesn't change how I relate to him or how I try to work on his behavior. And I recognize that calling him a jerk does nothing to change his behavior or improve his behavior. It doesn't guide my behavior toward him. It's just sometimes you just kind of shake your head and be like, you're kind of being a jerk right now. And you say it with a smile. So today we're going to focus on those labels that we apply to pets when we're trying to change, when we want to change their behavior. When we have a problem with their behavior and we wish it was different, and maybe we're trying to figure out how to change it. So not so much those well-meaning, cute labels. The problem with a label is often a label becomes an identification of the animal's personality. And it's almost like the pet becomes frozen in that personality with that label, and there's no room to change. You are X, and that's how you are. Once we identify a label, we sometimes don't look around for other explanations. And usually it's these other explanations that tell us what to do next. So once we identify the problem, the label, we almost get funneled down this path, kind of get stuck. A label can really dismiss context. Again, it's saying the personality of this pet is aggressive without taking into consideration that the behavior might be different in different contexts. And really, labels have this tendency to lead us down to the path of frustration because we think we've identified the problem and we're just trying to kind of spin our wheels to solve it. Maybe the internet tells us what to do with a pet with this label, maybe it doesn't. It leads us down the path of trying to punish our animal for being this particular way, or resignation. Just, I guess this is who they are, and there's nothing I can do about it because it's their, it encompasses who they are. So I either have to live with this bad behavior or I have to get rid of the pet. Neither one of those is really ideal. I don't want anyone to feel like they either have to sacrifice their life or their house for their pet, or sacrifice their pet to have a life and a house. It really can be both once we step past these sort of labels that freeze us in place. So let's look at some specific labels and let's dig into them a little deeper. And I wanted to start with a big one that gets thrown around a lot and that I hear in a huge number of contexts, and that is dominant, or also alpha, kind of the same category. So where do I hear this word being applied to pets? A pet that doesn't stop when they're told. So a pet that continues to jump up on someone, even though that someone is telling them, no, stop, get off, might get labeled as dominant. A pet that continues to perform some sort of unwanted behavior, even when they're punished for it, might be labeled as trying to be alpha, because they're ignoring the punishment and they keep trying to do what they want. A pet that isn't social with other animals, or that has conflict with other animals. Both cats and dogs get this a lot. One cat goes up to the other and kind of picks a little bit of a fight, and we might say that cat is trying to be alpha. Or two dogs meet on leash and one shows some aggressive behavior toward the other, and we might say, oh, that dog is trying to show the other one that it's alpha. Again, behaving aggressively in some situations. That can be labeled as dominant behavior to show that aggressive behavior. Or an animal that demands that attention, food, play, all kind of happens when they want it. Like, all right, wake up and feed me now. Hey, it's time to play. Hey, don't work, pay attention to me. That animal might be labeled as attempting to be the alpha in the home. And when we apply these terms, there's so much baggage wrapped up in this. We get really worried that if our pet is being dominant toward us or toward another pet, or trying to be alpha, that we're walking down a path of just more and more trouble. That if our pet wants to have control in our household, that their behavior is only going to get worse over time as they try to continue to get that control, or if they're allowed to have that control, they'll take it and they'll run with it. We worry that the world has sort of told us a responsible owner shows their pet that they are the pack leader. Responsible owners take charge and tell their pet, I'm the alpha in this situation. And if we don't do that in some way, are we being irresponsible? Are we setting ourselves up for failure? We might also worry and have this notion that if a pet is allowed to be dominant or allowed to think they're alpha, they will become aggressive, because an alpha is associated with that behavior. And finally, there's a sense that the pets in the home have to work out for themselves. One has to be alpha and the others have to respect that and give in to that. So that's what's going through a lot of people's minds when they start wondering, do I have an alpha animal? Maybe toward other pets or toward people, toward me. Do I need to be a pack leader? And here's where it gets kind of interesting. It turns out the concept of the alpha or dominance, the way we talk about it with dogs, has just gone down a very strange path away from reality. Many years ago, some researchers studied wolves, and they studied wolves in a zoo. And at the time, wolves came into a zoo because they were captured in the wild and put in a zoo because the zoo wanted wolves. We don't do that anymore, but that's how things were done. And then they looked at those wolves and they said, oh, look, one wolf behaves aggressively to the others to show it's in control, and then it gets to eat first and it gets to decide where they go, and the other wolves defer. And one wolf uses that aggression to maintain its control over the others, and that's the alpha. Cool, that's how wolves work. Someone came along and said, oh, if that's how wolves work, dogs come from wolves, that must be how dogs work as well. Fast forward, and someone went and watched wolves in the wild, and a whole new picture came out. And it turns out wolves in the wild living in a pack are actually living in a family. A wolf pack is 2 parents and their babies. Sometimes there's a sibling, an aunt or an uncle, not really an uncle, an aunt living in the group too. And if you think about it as a family, it paints a very different picture. It turns out the wolves in those zoos were juvenile male wolves, because those are the wolves that don't have packs. Those are the wolves they found roaming alone in the woods and they captured and took into a zoo. So if you think about situations with humans where juvenile males are locked into a small space, their behavior doesn't always represent good social behavior between humans. And you do get conflict and fighting and rules and structure that comes into place that's sort of maintained by force. But a family in sort of a normal situation doesn't behave that way. So when they looked at wolf packs, there wasn't aggression. There wasn't this sort of conflict. There was communication. Sometimes when wolves communicate, they show their teeth. They put their mouths on each other. They don't have any words. That's kind of normal. But there was no attempt by one to always maintain control by pushing down the others and behaving this way. So we have just been kind of led astray by the idea of the alpha wolf. And then we go into this idea of dogs and cats aren't wolves. So their social structure aren't going to be the same as wolves anyway. So dogs don't live in pack structures. If left to their own devices, they aren't hunting as a pack. They're foragers, they're scavengers. They go hunt through our trash. And so their social structures look very different because of that. They're not living under mom and dad and then becoming mom and dad and taking care of their babies. They're living in loose groups, much more like maybe your neighborhood. If you live in an apartment building where everyone has kind of their space, they might protect their space a little bit, but their relationships with their neighbors are all kind of be varied. Cats are similar. Cats don't live in a pack structure, and so they don't have these rules of how they interact with each other in the same way. So the idea of a dominant animal or an animal who wants to be alpha is problematic because it doesn't make any sense with how the animals live amongst themselves. So it's really hard for us to apply how we should somehow interact. And it has been taken to mean that we should use some unfortunate training methods that have risks to behavioral and physical health of our pets, like heavy punishment that are in service to maintaining our alphaness over them, when in fact they don't know what we even mean by alpha. Their brains aren't even considering an alpha position in their lives. And then we're always kind of just in conflict. Am I dominant enough over my pet? Is my pet trying to be dominant over me? Are these two pets, what is one trying to be dominant? Should I support that or should I stop that? What's going on? So instead, I want us to kind of let go of this and get a little more basic. Pets do what works to meet their needs. So if your dog rushes through the door in front of you, it's because they want to go outside, and rushing through the door meets their need of wanting to go outside. If your dog jumps on you, it's because they want attention, and jumping on you gets them attention. It's not an idea of, and this will make me leader of the pack. It's, I want to go outside, plain and simple. Training is required for our pets to know what we want. So if our pet is rushing out the door in front of us, we're not thinking they need to be taught that I'm alpha. We're thinking they need to be taught that I don't want them rushing through the door. Keep it simple. Most animals actually want to avoid conflict. It's not normal for animals to maintain part of their life by fighting. That usually happens when we've put them into an abnormal situation. We're not meeting their needs in proper ways. So if we set them up for success, most animals will choose not to show aggression or fight because it doesn't feel good. It's dangerous to get into a fight with somebody, right? We can think that individuals just have preferences. So if our dog is showing some sort of aggressive behavior toward another dog, it might be they just don't like that dog and they want them to go away. We're going to talk about aggressive in a bit. But it might just be that they're showing you what they like, what they want, what they don't like, avoiding this, going for that. And finally, most aggression is based in fear. And so we don't need to worry about that we haven't somehow shown our pet that we are in charge of them, and that's why they're behaving this aggressively. Usually it's because we haven't shown them what we want from them and we haven't taught them to feel safe in the context. So start with the more likely options, and then maybe there's some sense of wanting to control you, but that's way down on the list. And there's a million things you can do before that that's going to give you relief from this problem. All right, so I always like to start with the big one. Let's talk about the counterpoint to that, which is submissive. So if we kind of let go of the idea of dominant pet because it doesn't make sense for our pets, the way our pets live and their history, then we kind of let go of submissive as well. But what do we mean by submissive? We mean they don't fight, they don't struggle, and they kind of put up with anything. Another animal walks up and they just walk away, or they just sort of stand back. I see this with cats a lot. They say, oh, we have one food bowl, but there's no conflict. If cat X is eating and cat Y walks up, cat X just leaves. And then cat X waits for cat Y to finish eating. So cat X is very submissive, so there's no issue. Now, I consider labeling an animal submissive as potentially problematic because, one, we sort of consider it's the only good way to be. And I think that sets us up to kind of be harsh on a lot of animals who aren't just naturally going to give up and, whatever you want, I'll just take it. Also, often what we're seeing in submissive behavior is actually stress or fear. So an animal who's behaving in a submissive way, stepping back, lowering their body, rolling over. This dog, I think, is a great example of that rolling over. That maybe this dog loves belly rubs, and this picture caught him at the wrong moment. But I see a dog who's kind of stiff. His mouth is closed. His eyes, the whites are showing. And I wonder if this dog is actually not kind of stressed by what's happening. And he's saying, I'm no threat. So submissive behavior, when we talk about it in a situation where there is a dominant hierarchy, so a situation where one animal wants to tell another animal to, stop or back off, and the other animal says, oh yeah, definitely, I'm not here for a fight, I'll back off. That animal is being submissive. They're sort of saying, I don't want to fight, I don't want any conflict, please don't hurt me. And we don't want our animals to go around thinking, please don't hurt me, right? That's not really a great way of being. So instead, I want us to think about recognizing stress in our animals. The definition, the distinction between submissive, sort of happy-go-lucky, fine, and stressed, please don't hurt me, is important. Provide separate resources for our pets who are living in the same space to prevent bullying, especially with cats. Separate perches, separate beds, separate food, separate water, separate litter boxes. Now they might share. They might both eat from, one eats from this bowl and one eats from that bowl, and then they switch. That's absolutely fine. But they have the option to do what they need to do without deferring to one another constantly, without trying to make sure there's not going to be a fight by saying, I'll step back so that there's no fight. And then advocating for our pets and sort of making the distinction between doing fine, feeling good, and just putting up with something that's unpleasant for them, and just submitting to something so that there's no conflict over it, and building their confidence if they need that. So if we have a dog who's just sort of shutting down in fear of the vet, or when a small child gets rough with them, we want to advocate and build their confidence in those situations and make sure they're not being treated harshly because they'll take it. Okay. Stubborn, this came up. I just love this dog leaning in like, I'm going to go this way. I don't know where you're going to go. So what do we mean by stubborn? Continues to do an unwanted behavior even though they've been punished for it. Doesn't listen to our cues or our commands, won't respond to what we are telling them to do, or won't get over or give up things. So when we try to hold them, they struggle. And then no matter how, even though we struggle. And then no matter how, even though we hold them harder and we don't let them go, they just keep struggling. And the next time they struggle more and they just don't get over struggling. They're stubborn. And so common examples are dog walking on leash, pulls constantly. It's always pulling. They're kind of choking themselves. Maybe I'm tugging on the leash some to say that stop pulling, and you won't get that choking sensation. The cat who's up on the counter even though they get squirted every time. These are common places we use the word stubborn. And why can stubborn be problematic? Often it leads to an increasing in the amount or the severity of the punishment we try to use to stop the behavior, because they kind of ignore the first level. So we try level 2, they kind of ignore that. We try level 3. It can justify, again, that harsh, potentially dangerous training that relies on aversives and heavy punishment, trying to make the animal behave in a certain way. And sometimes it can just lead to a limit on the pet's freedom because we have to isolate them. They're so stubborn, I can't house train them. They just refuse to go, to stop going inside. So now they have to live outside. So here's one of the things that I think is really funny about the word stubborn. I've heard people say things like, my cat continues to get on the counter even though I squirt them every time. They're so stubborn. And in my mind, I'm hearing, even though every time I squirt my cat every time, and it hasn't changed their behavior, I keep doing it. I'm like, who's being stubborn? So we get locked into it too, where we can't think of anything. We just kind of keep trying to affect their behavior in a similar way. And we catch ourselves in our own stubbornness sometimes. So first of all, main reason that we see this kind of ignores punishment is because there is a reward for the pet. Even though there's a punishment, the reward is bigger. So pulling on leash lets you walk where you want to go. It is worth kind of choking with the pressure on the collar if I get to walk where I'm going to go. This is how it is. This is how it has to be, I guess. The cat on the counter says, well, I want to be up high so I can see what's going on, get away from the kids, and steal the snack. The snack is worth the squirt bottle. If I can grab a bite of food or a sip of your coffee, whatever, before you grab the squirt bottle, it's worth it to me. So first of all, if we want to break our pet's stubbornness, we need to make sure they're not getting rewarded for the behavior that they're doing. We can't punish something away if the behavior is still rewarding enough for the pet. So looking at it from their point of view. And then we need to train them. We need to actually show them what we mean by what we're saying. And if they're not responding to our cues or not doing what we want, they are not trained. Plain and simple. A trained pet responds to cues in a predictable way in order to get some sort of motivating reward, reinforcement. So if your pet doesn't do that, they're not being stubborn, they're not trained. So identify what motivates them. Why are they doing a particular behavior? And why might they, what might be motivating enough for them to change that behavior? And then build a history of the new behavior being reinforcing. So when walking on leash, they want to pull, they want to go somewhere. They want to get to that bush and sniff that bush. So that's their motivation, is to go forward. We can remove the reward for pulling by stopping when our dogs pull. It doesn't work to pull anymore. So there's no reason to do it. We don't have to jerk them. We don't have to punish them. We just don't give them the reward for pulling. And then we can use a variety of things. We can use treats to show them if they stay close to us, they get treats, and we'll walk to the bush and they can also sniff the bush. Or we can wait for them to stop pulling and then walk toward the bush as long as they're not pulling. So they're learning what we want from them by using that motivation. And then finally, we're training them. We're using behavior modification to teach them not to give up their struggle, but to behave in a different way. So they struggle when you try to trim their nails. They're not going to give that up. That's not stubbornness. That's discomfort, fear, etc. And so instead, we're going to teach them how to feel differently in that situation rather than trying to force them through. Aggressive. This is another big one. We're hitting all the big words today. So first of all, what do we mean by aggressive? We mean In this case, I'm going to say we're talking about a pet who uses vocalizations, claws, and or teeth to make something stop or go away. So it's the back off. It's the growl, it's the hiss, it's the claws, the scratching, the biting, the snapping. So identifying an animal as aggressive is problematic for a lot of reasons. The main one being it expands the reaction to a specific situation, a situation that makes the animal say no, stop, back off, into an entire personality trait. And a dog behaves aggressively toward the vet, then becomes labeled as an aggressive dog. And when we say aggressive, we have to deal with that. That's dangerous. Aggression is dangerous. So if we have an aggressive animal, we have to stop that in its tracks. We have to crack down on that. So we might feel, and we might be told that we're justifying using harsh punishment to make sure that that aggression does not happen again. And unfortunately, when we label an animal as aggressive, it can be a death sentence for them. We're not going to be able to rehome an animal that has a label of aggressive. I'm not going to say, hey, friends, do you want my aggressive dog? I can't keep him, and expect someone to say, sure. If I take that animal to the shelter and label it and say, I'm giving him up because he's aggressive, that shelter likely isn't going to place that animal into a new home. You know, they might try and ask you questions and get to the bottom of what's going on, but they might not have the resources to do that. So we want to be really careful with this word and clarify what is the context and the trigger for this aggressive behavior. It is not an animal. So we don't want to, just like people, we don't want to label someone as violent. We want to say they did a violent behavior. And there are situations that that's appropriate. If you feel you're threatened, you might feel justified in yelling at somebody, or even hitting them, shoving them, kicking them, pulling out some sort of weapon on them if you feel your safety is threatened. We don't want our dogs to do that. We need to make sure that their safety doesn't feel threatened. So really identifying triggers and context. Evaluate for medical factors. Aggression can certainly be due to medical, especially if it's new. So making sure that we're being really clear that this isn't something that has to do with pain or illness. Make sure we're not labeling normal or playful behaviors as aggressive. This is not an aggressive dog because he snapped at another dog. It might be a dog who's communicating in a very normal way. So learning what normal play for your pet would look like, your species, learning about their social behaviors and how they communicate to one another. And dogs do growl and snap at each other as communication, and it can be very, very normal and healthy. So we need to evaluate our specific behavior and, again, avoid labeling the entire dog. Again, understand aggressive behavior as a response to a situation, and that means we can control that situation. A dog who growls when you approach his food is not necessarily going to bite somebody who walks through the front door. It's not that one bleeds over and becomes the other just because it started to happen. So we can identify why it's happening in what situations and then deal with that specifically. And knowing, I said it before and I'll say it again, the vast majority of aggressive behavior is based in fear. So addressing fear and other triggers through thoughtful behavior management and modification. So that means working with a professional who has experience with this, with modern experience with this, and can identify sort of the specifics of this and isn't saying, oh, you have an aggressive dog, let's use this tool on them. All right. Unpredictable or random. So this one, it's pretty easy to know what we mean by this. We mean, didn't see that coming, no idea why that happened, don't understand why it happens sometimes and not other times. It's out of the blue. And why these words are difficult, if I describe my cat as just completely unpredictable, what do I do about that? If I can't predict it, that really leaves me with nowhere to go. So when I start using the word random or unpredictable, where can I start? First, medical. If this is randomly just started, or it randomly happens at certain times, we might consider whether there's a medical issue going on. Start to learn to recognize warning signs and signals. Often we are missing things rather than it truly being random. We are just not catching the important signals that show us it's about to happen because we're busy. We're not as attuned to our pet's behavior. A cat's warning signs can be as subtle as their back rippling and their ears flicking and their tail twitching. And that's a lot of signaling from them. They think they made it loud and clear, and we just missed it. And we now think this behavior came out of nowhere. Track and identify patterns. It's really hard to even come up with examples of so-called random, unpredictable behavior because this is what people say to me. My cat has this really random, aggressive behavior where he attacks me unpredictably every morning. So if it happens every morning, it's not unpredictable. Another example might be my dog is unpredictably aggressive toward other dogs who we meet on leash when we're walking. You know, he's totally fine off leash, but he's really unpredictable on leash. He will snap at them. Okay. On leash is the predictable condition. So sometimes it's really easy when we actually start describing the problem, like, oh, I just said 4 different things that help me understand what's going on. Sometimes it's less clear. So track what's happening, what was going on before, where you were, who was there, and you'll hopefully start to identify some patterns in your random behavior. And we want to keep lots of information because of this idea of trigger stacking. So trigger stacking is the sense that your cat doesn't pee outside the litter box just because the litter box is dirty. And they don't pee outside the litter box just because some friends came over. They pee outside the litter box because friends came over and the litter box was dirty. So there's a threshold at which they display the behavior, and little things add up till they cross that threshold. Another example might be the dog is totally fine with kids, and the dog is totally fine with kids except in the evenings. They get tired throughout the day, and then they can't deal with the children. So they're fine with children if they're not tired, and they're fine with adults when they're tired. But if they're tired and there's a child, then they have issues. So that's trigger stacking. More than one thing is contributing. So that's why keeping track is really, really useful. And again, sometimes reaching out to a professional who might have a sense of what triggers typically stack. Litter box issues are a really common one where they're not consistent. But when we start looking at it, we can identify certain triggers all line up, and then we have litter box issues. And then one of the triggers gets better, gets resolved, and the issue goes away. But we didn't identify exactly why. And so we end up having this pattern repeat. Another one I hear a lot in relation to cats, but also dogs, is jealous. So what do we mean by this? Usually jealous gets applied when we have a pet who does something destructive to a particular individual's belongings. Like, my boyfriend came over and my cat peed on his shoes. Maybe the pet might be antisocial or unfriendly toward a particular individual or display some aggressive behavior. So my boyfriend comes over and my dog growls at him. He's jealous that I have someone new in my life. Or just generally our pet starts doing something we don't want when someone new is in the house. So I got a new dog and now my cat is peeing on the bed. They're jealous. And along with sort of not leaving us a path to fix this, like how do you get your dog to stop being jealous? You send them to talk therapy. I don't even know how to stop being jealous myself, right? It really forces a choice. Like, well, do I want this boyfriend or do I want this dog? Do I want this baby or do I want this cat? Some choices are easy. You know, I brought home a new dog and my cat is upset. I really want a dog though. Okay. So jealous doesn't leave us a lot of paths forward. What can we think about instead? So number one is going to be stress due to a change in routine or a change in the house. Cats in particular are very routine oriented. So did life change in some way that's resulting in stress? Litter box issues in cats are highly stress driven. So it might not seem obvious that the cat peeing on the bed is stress related, but it absolutely is. Fear-based aggression. So the new boyfriend's coming over and the dog's growling. Let's think that the dog is scared of the boyfriend before we think that the dog is jealous. Territorial insecurity, we talk about a little bit more in terms of cats. So a new pet comes into the house and the cat starts behaving poorly, or a new baby with some sort of problem behavior that the cat's displaying. It's often due to changes in smell, changes in the things in the household, changes in the cat's comfort in moving through the house, which is their territory. So now they're feeling very insecure in their home space. And that, again, stress leads to problem behavior. We can also consider if there's owner guarding. Is this jealousy? Like, I don't want to share? Maybe. I don't know. I think there are people who would argue that dogs and cats can be jealous. Most of the time, however, again, jealousy doesn't provide us with what to do next. So owner guarding is just like, in a lot of ways, it's just like food guarding. We want to teach our pet, typically dogs, to feel comfortable with the idea of someone approaching their beloved family member. And we teach that through counter conditioning. Make it a positive thing. Give them alternative behaviors to choose. Boyfriend's coming to sit on the couch. As he walks by the couch, first he tosses a treat to the dog. Oh, the dog's like, oh, you walked up to the couch and you gave me a treat. Cool. Actually, I don't really mind if you come up to the couch. And we slowly change that feeling of I have to guard it because it's mine to, hey, you can be here too. No big deal. All right, last one. I threw a little curveball in here. Friendly. So why in the world would friendly be a potentially problematic label? So let's define what we mean by friendly. First of all, seeks interactions with other people and pets, chooses to go be social with other individuals, and or has not displayed fearful or aggressive behavior in the past. So you might be seeing why I think friendly can be a little bit of a dangerous label, because when we apply the label friendly, we tick that box. Oh, our animal is either aggressive or they're friendly, and mine is friendly, so it's fine. Whatever happens, they're friendly. And just like an animal isn't aggressive, tick the box. An animal isn't friendly, tick the box. Their behavior is friendly. It's pro-social toward others. And if we tick the box friendly, it kind of gives us permission to not watch, to not really pay attention to what's happening, to not worry too much about our dog when they're around that toddler because our dog is friendly. It might let us dismiss stress signs. Oh yeah, they've rolled on their back and they're really stiff and kind of leaning away, but they're friendly, so they're not going to do anything. We don't really need to worry about it. They would never. And sometimes it puts our pets into dangerous or inappropriate situations. So it could be that we allow them to interact, again, with a small child, and the situation is dangerous because the child could hurt them, or because it's dangerous to the pet if they were to actually hurt a child, right? Their life could be in danger if they caused injury to another. The other way, and the common way I see us put our friendly pets into dangerous situations, is letting an off-leash dog run up to a leashed dog. So a dog that's on leash may not be good with other dogs. Like their owner is choosing to keep them under control on a leash rather than let them roam, possibly for a reason. And even if they are good with other dogs in some context, if they're on leash and your dog is off leash, it can make that on-leash dog feel more vulnerable and more likely to behave in a way that says stop and go away, and then fights can happen. It happens all the time. And even if the dogs aren't fighting, maybe their play gets really boisterous, people get knocked down, dogs slip out of collars. I've seen it all, unfortunately. So assuming our dog is friendly, and that gives us permission to just let them kind of run up to whoever and whatever they want, can put them into a dangerous situation, or it's really be very unneighborly, very rude of us. So what are we going to do instead? Remember that all dogs, all cats, all pets, all people can feel stress and fear at times. And if we haven't seen our pet in every situation, we don't necessarily know. And also, as our pets get older, they change. They have new preferences, new feelings. Their bodies change. They might be more protective or sensitive of handling that they tolerated before. All pets can bite. All pets can bite. So ticking the box as your pet as friendly potentially leaves them vulnerable to ending up in the wrong situation and biting somebody. And then what? There's a wide range of things that can happen after that. And there's no reason for that to happen. Even if your pet truly is not the type to ever go for the bite, it is not fair to them to be handled roughly just because they won't bite. Doesn't give us license to do things that are rough or harsh. Or I think about the things I did to my dog when I was a child, and he occasionally warned me, but he was far too kind, and I feel a little bit bad now looking back at what costumes I shoved him into and clips that I put in his hair. And yeah, he was a very good dog to label him, but I don't think that he should have been made to deal with me in that way. And then finally, social pets, friendly pets should still be expected to be under control and polite. So not running off doing whatever they want at the park just because they're not the type to bite other people or get into fights. They should still be under your control. My number one rule, if you do choose to have your dog off leash, say on a trail or in an area, is 100% recall to you. And if you're on a trail passing a leashed dog, leash your own dog. Don't let your off leash dog harass leashed dogs. Not fair to anybody. Okay, that's my soapbox in case anyone was wondering. All right, so what other labels might we have? To question, obedient? Are they obedient, or are they just shut down and scared of punishment? Are they stupid, or have you just not trained them? Have you not motivated them? Territorial, normal versus abnormal. Who are we to say? Abused, just being abused leads you to sort of treat your animal differently and maybe not address certain behavior in a way that would be good for both of you. Neurotic, wild, lazy, over the top. I think you're all getting the idea of this. How do we question this? What do we really mean? What might be actually going on? So now that we have all these words, we've talked a lot about going past the label on all these, but in general, how do we go beyond our labels? First of all, what is the motivation for the behavior you're seeing? In that moment, what is the dog trying to achieve? What is the purpose of their behavior? And I want us to avoid the circular reasoning. He jumps up because he's dominant. I can tell he's dominant because he jumps up. Okay, that didn't get us anywhere. So let's just walk away from that one. Another way of looking at it is the why game. Why does he jump up? Because he's dominant. Why is he dominant? Because he jumps up. Okay. Why does he jump up? Well, he's trying to get closer to my face. Why is he trying to get closer to your face? So he can lick me and smell me. And why does he want to lick me? Oh, he likes me. He likes the attention that I give him. Oh. So why does he want attention? He likes attention. He jumps up to get attention. Now we have something that we can work with. Why is the cat peeing on the bed? Oh, because they're jealous of the new baby. Why are they jealous of the new baby? Because the new baby got the room they used to use and is getting a lot of attention that they're not getting. Oh, well, why would it bother them to have their room taken over and get less attention? Well, because now their litter box is in the basement and they're getting ignored, they're not getting attention. Oh, so litter box placement and attention might be motivating their behavior. Okay. Basics. food, play, attention, security, so feeling safe, meeting a need, avoiding pain or fear, seeking pleasure. This is what I mean by basic motivations. All of these things are things we can do. We can do something with. They want food, we can control whether or not they get food. They want play, we can control that. They're avoiding pain or fear, we can address pain and fear. We can make sure they're not getting hurt. We can make sure they're not feeling afraid. We can help them feel safer. These are all things we have concrete paths forward for. So when I say what's the motivation, what is basic motivation, I mean what is something that we can affect, okay? Meet their needs. So basic natural needs that our pets have: sniffing, foraging, hunting, perching, scratching, a clean litter box, an appropriate place to potty that's, available to them. Security, addressing any fears they have, avoiding punishment, which just destroys a sense of security. Teaching cooperative care. So cooperative care is, instead of wrestling you to the ground and holding you down to train your nails, I'm going to train you to lay quietly and let me train your nails. I'm going to train you to be an active participant in care and to feel safe and comfortable with it. It's absolutely doable, both cats and dogs. Social interactions, I'm thinking about choosing appropriate matches. I'm not throwing my dog into, maybe, senior dog who doesn't like large, rambunctious dogs into the dog park. I'm just not going to go there. It's not beneficial to anybody. I'm going to train polite behaviors, supervise and manage, and provide separate resources to prevent bullying or conflict. So these are just the basics to start to create more positive behaviors, regardless of the motivations, regardless of whether our pet is jealous or not. They need to have security. They need to have natural behaviors met. I'm also going to ask this hard question. What have you taught them? What have I, as their human, taught them? And what am I doing that's maintaining these problem behaviors? So if you taught your pet to demand attention of you because you sit at your desk and you work for 6 hours, and when they come up and paw at you, you go, oh yeah, okay, I'll let you out. No, you've actually taught them to paw at you to get attention from you. That might be fine if they're not abusing the privilege. Have you taught them to tolerate or ignore punishment because you've been trying to jerk their collar to get them to stop pulling, but they're still, they're still getting to walk forward as they pull? You've actually taught them to just ignore that and to put up with it because the reward is still there. To be persistent, to just keep trying, to keep pawing your face and meowing a little louder and a little louder every morning until you finally get up, or to skip those warning signs. So you taught them that when they growl at you, you're going to grab them, shake them, and roll them over. And now they're not growling at you, they're biting you. That's actually, unfortunately, something that you taught them. You taught them that growling gets them rolled. So if they're feeling unsafe, they should skip right to the point. I've unfortunately met these dogs and cats who just say, what's the point of warning you if you're going to not listen or you're going to try to punish me? I'm just going to make sure you go away, and when I use my teeth, you go away. Okay. So being really honest with ourselves about what role we've played in teaching them these skills, and then going back and reteaching more appropriate skills. So wrapping up, I even left time for questions. The takeaways that I want you to think about: focus on the behavior in front of you and the basic motivation or purpose of that behavior. So I had a question recently. It was, how do we tell if a dog is barking at other dogs out of fear or excitement? I said, well, when does the behavior stop? What's the goal? So if the behavior stops when the other dog goes further away, that's probably fear. Their goal with that behavior is to make the other dog go further away. If the behavior stops when the other dog comes closer and they can meet and they play, that behavior is probably trying to get that dog to come closer. So we can sort of ask, what is the behavior achieving for the animal that they keep repeating it? If the dog jumps up and we give them attention, they're probably seeking attention out of that, even if it's negative attention. No, bad dog. Meet their needs for stress relief and feeling secure, especially. So a lot of cat problem behavior is based out of stress. Dogs too, but so much of cats stress relief, meeting their need to feel secure in their territory. Teach them what you want. If they're not responding to what you're asking, start with the assumption that they haven't learned the behavior yet. They haven't learned what you mean. And it takes more to train than a 6-week course 3 years ago. It takes more than a few minutes in your kitchen for, a few days on the weekend. It is an ongoing process. So if there's something you want your animal to do or to not do, it takes that training experience. And this goes for cats and dogs. If any of you missed my homeschooling your pet, where I talked about training your cat, you can teach your cat what you want just as much as you can teach your dog. And then finally, I encourage you to think about working with your pet instead of against them. This isn't a battle of the wills. This isn't I get what I want or you get what you want and I have to, make sure that I win. You can all get what you want. We say like a dog jumps up to get attention, so we don't give them attention so they don't jump up. But if they sit and to get attention and we give them attention for sitting because that's what we want, this is working with them. They can show us that they want our attention and we can reward them with that attention and not get jumped on. So it's a partnership. That's where I want you to kind of start working on these behaviors. All right, thank you so much for all being here, and thank you to Silicon Valley Pet Project for having me. Here's all the social media information. Silicon Valley Pet Project at SV Pet Project on Facebook and Instagram. svpetproject.org is the website. If you haven't already, check out the adoptable animals. They're adorable. 2 of them are in my bathroom right now. And consider fostering, volunteering. If it is within your means, consider a donation to thank them for the work they've been doing and the educational programs they've been putting on. But of course, social media likes and shares are currency in and of themselves these days. On the right there, that's me. So Canine Engineering at the top and Feline Engineering at the bottom. Again, feel free to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I try not to be spammy, but to provide some useful information. And the websites also have some educational material, as well as information about my private behavior modification and training services, most of which is being done online at the moment. So easy to schedule, easy to get started. If you are struggling with all of this and you say, okay, so my pet isn't stubborn, they're just not trained, now what? That's where someone like me can come in. My dog isn't aggressive, they're showing aggressive behavior in a specific context, now what? Definitely reach out and we can start answering some of those now what questions for you. Questions for me. Everyone was pretty quiet, but we have a few minutes left. Any words that I didn't touch on that you want me to dive into? I'll give everyone a moment to type. So the question is, you mentioned bullying earlier. How do you differentiate bullying from any of the other words, negative connotations that you used? Yeah, so that's a fair question. I threw that word out there as though it's a concrete distinction. Which probably isn't super helpful. I use bullying as one animal forcing another animal out away from resources that they're trying to use, or monopolizing a space so that another animal doesn't feel comfortable coming into that space. So a cat that lays across the doorway so that another cat can't move from one room to another, I would consider that a bullying behavior. I'm using my presence to control your behavior. And I usually define it because I see one cat placing themselves in a way and I see another cat actively choosing to avoid or move away from that situation. So that's how when I see that, the word bullying is how I label that behavior. right? It's tricky, right? Labels are hard. We can't actually get away from them. So in the way I talk about things, I don't usually consider bullying to necessarily have to have an aggressive component. So the cats may not be growling, hissing, or fighting, and there still is this subtle undertone of, no, you can't come over here because I'm here. And it's not a very socially healthy way of being. And so to prevent that, I say, well, you can lay in that doorway and block the way to that litter box, but there's another litter box right there that's available to them. And so it takes away this pressure to interact and to pass and to do these things. On the dog side, I might consider bullying to be one dog sort of constantly trying to roughhouse and play with another dog who's clearly giving signals that say, please stop or please go away, and sort of not responding, or possibly sort of, this is when I call my pets rude. Yes, rude is another word that I frequently use. And again, I like to do my best. I'm imperfect. We're all imperfect. To say that is rude behavior. That is aggressive behavior. That is rude behavior. That is fearful behavior. And to keep that focused on that behavior that I'm seeing is this. And yes, I certainly will call a pet rude, just, you're being rude. I think I said that to the kittens in my bathroom several times while I was practicing this talk. You're being rude, you're on my computer. And again, my idea with labels is if they're beneficial in helping us understand the true cause of the behavior and how to move forward in helping the behavior in a positive, humane, effective way, that's fine. That's great. It's just that there are some of these words that we get stuck on, right? And we kind of get into a spiral of not knowing what to do and wondering if we need to get rid of our pet, if we need to send them away for training or send them away to a new home or send them away to a farm. And, I don't ever want us to feel stuck or frustrated. All right, y'all. We are right about at the hour, and if you all have more questions, you can follow me, ask me questions on social media. If you're curious about the one-on-one services I offer, the website has tons of information about that. You're also welcome to email me directly. My email address is jessica@canineengineering.com or felineengineering.com. So if you want to write that down, you want to send me an email or send me a message on Facebook or Instagram, you're more than welcome to do that. I really enjoy chatting with fellow pet lovers and anyone who's interested in the nitty-gritty of behavior. Yeah, I love having those conversations. So if you want me to talk for way more than an hour, we can set that up. Thank you all so much for being here for Wednesday webinar tonight, and those of you who have made it in the past. I've really appreciated it. I've had a lot of fun, and I hope to chat with you more in the future. Have a great night.